entering in that you are selecting all panelists and attendees from your chat panel. And then we just want you to, as you are entering in, you know, share where you're from. Share, we would like you to try out the annotation tool here. So if you can find that from your panel and choose a stamp and then indicate where you're from. Oh, we got a couple from Minnesota, one from Pennsylvania. And then if you're not in the United States, we have a little box over on the side that you can share that. And you can use on your annotation tool, instead of choosing the stamp, you can choose text and then you can type. Elizabeth, you're asking how you get the stamps. You should, when you choose your annotation, annotate, the stamp should be one of the options. Do you see that? And then if you roll over stamp, there should be some options. Star, heart, check mark. Yeah, Dan just shared where it says you're viewing Carrie Zenz's screen. Click on view options. Does that help, Elizabeth? Got a couple from Pennsylvania, one from Illinois, a couple from Minnesota. That's where I'm at. I'm in Minnesota right now. So it's a pretty nice day today. It's a little overcast, but it's warming up a little bit here, which is really nice given, you know, the situation that we're all in. So at least I think this weekend we'll be able to get out and maybe do a little yard work and pick up all the sticks. The snow has all melted, but it did snow yesterday, so there is just a little bit of dusting from that, but otherwise our snow was all gone. And you know, some of you are not getting your annotation, saying it's not available. Hi, Barb from Minneapolis. Can you try view options and see if the annotation tool is working for you? So you guys are not seeing anything under the view options. Is that, no, it is not available. Okay. Alrighty, well, then we will just, no, I gotta switch back here. We can clear, if anyone
Carrie, before you clear off those, look at your options on your, as a panel or a host, one of the drop downs on the more, and see if it says anything about annotations.
There's an option to disable participants' annotations, but that's not chosen.
Right. Click on that and see if it's not like switched.
Okay, now I'm gonna okay, so then I clicked allow. Did that change things for anybody? The annotation.
I'm just wondering if it's reversed, that it's supposed to say allow.
Well, so let me do that. hang on, I'm going to disable it and see if that does the opposite effect for you guys. Okay, if anyone can tell me if the annotation tool is available to them now. Under view options, do you see it? Not available, Jennifer says no, no. Okay, just share where you're from in the chat window. And I'll just get the map off. If you guys can clear your, if you have done an annotation, if you can please clear it. Here, I'll clear. I'm going to clear all Germany. Okay, I think we're good. Wichita, Kansas. Ontario, Canada, Baltimore, Boston, Tucson, Dallas. Is it warm down in Dallas? Galveston, Texas, another Texas. Naples, Florida. Oh, that is beautiful down there. Wisconsin, New Mexico, Minneapolis. I'm from, anyone coming on, I'm from a really remote area of Minnesota down in the southern southwest corner. 86 in Dallas. Wow. That's nice. Also share, just share something that's come out of this whole situation that we're all in. Something positive, like a bright spot that's come out. It can be something related to work and working remotely that's been really cool, or something just like in your everyday lives. I know for me, I feel like I've been more connected with my preschoolers' teacher. She started a private Facebook group and posts a ton of videos. She reads books to them and posts them and shares a bunch of activities. I see people spending time with their kids. I know one of my friends said she felt like it was more like it was focusing more on what it was like when she was growing up. So maybe a little bit less of the technology and more of the discovering nature, being outside, doing just some of the more, board games and things like that. Connecting virtually, virtual happy hours. I know those are happening a lot, and I was going to do one of those with some of my girlfriends, I think, on Fridays. So that'll be kind of fun. Using the same Love Flash Mob Dance Party. Yep, those are fun. Lots of cooking. Again, yeah, with your chat, make sure it's all panelists and attendees on your chat panel that you have that selected. Oh, you're teaching remotely, a lot of experience with recording. 4-year-old nephew has moved in. Wow, busy. I know a lot of us are juggling working, we're parenting and teaching our kids, so there's a lot to balance. My art and crafts room makes Michael's look pathetic. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, learning new things. I think learning new ways to leverage, technology and connecting with people in a different way. Cool. Oh, hello from Paris. I want to go there someday so badly. Okay, I think we're at the top of the hour here. So we are here to co-create your playbook for remote work success. I'm Carrie Zenz with Allen Interactions, and we're a company that designs and develops learning and technology solutions to improve businesses' performance, adapt them. What better time to adapt than right now? Obviously, people are being thrown into that. We're kind of doing like a whole sports theme today. We're in a different kind of, March has led us to a different kind of madness. Normally it would be March Madness, which I know everyone loves and pays attention to and participates in and watches, and that is not happening this March. So we're kind of wrapping this all up into a basketball theme today, just kind of in honor of what would normally be going on. But we are really here today to share tips and strategies and things that you guys can take and have success with. It's all about like getting those quick wins, 3-pointers, layups, 3-point shots. I'm a big basketball lover, so this is kind of fun for me. So we have some experts here today to do just that with you. They are Dr. Deborah Smith-Cook. She is the owner and president of Theseus, a coaching and consulting company that delivers team performance coaching, strategy coaching and consulting, and change management through individuals, teams, and organizations to build superior performance. We also have Dr. Christina Bars. She's an experienced HR learning and organizational change expert. Her sweet spot is building systems that support, engage, and inspire cultures with measurable and sustained results. And moderating this hour is Dr. Dan McCoy. He is a senior learning solutions analyst with Allen Interactions. He's an experienced chief learning officer and learning executive who has spent his career deploying learning as a key strategic asset to develop adaptive organizational cultures and talent strategies. So along with them, we are leaning into you guys to share what's going on with you, what's working with you, what's challenging you, what you have questions on. So we really want this to be as much of an open dialogue as possible. I do want to point out that a recording of this is going to be made available to you via email. So you will have that in a few days along with the playbook. So we will build out the playbook that we've already created and add all the things that are shared here today for you. And you can also get many resources, including these resources, which will be available on our website at alleninteractions.com. Again, just a reminder of your chat panel and to set it to all panelists and attendees. Please enter in your questions when you have them. Dan is going to be checking that. And we have some great team members on the back channel here also supporting. That includes Claire Letts and Rich Peterson are also online with us. I am going to be sharing some tweets today, so these are the hashtags to be aware of. If you want to write those down, Claire will be throwing those into the chat every so often just to remind you. But those are the hashtags to use: AI webinar and then AI remote work playbook are the hashtags. So we're going to kick off some things with the poll. I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Dan McCoy here, and he can kind of share with you a little bit of perspective on why we're asking these poll questions.
Yeah, so as this webinar started, it seems that everybody's decided to start remodeling their condos upstairs. There's some trucks outside. There's some people playing pickleball across the street. And I think we're starting to cook in my kitchen here. So there's multiple noises. So I apologize for that. I'm sure some of you are going through the same thing. One of the things that we've noticed as everybody's been starting to work from home is that, of course, the use of video conferencing software has gone way, way, way up. So we're interested in what video conferencing software people are using, how frequently, and then really how we might apply that to L&D or training in our the new context that we're in. So that's the spirit of this poll.
So yeah, Dan means right now, with regard to using the tools with what's happening right now.
So this is a way for us to gather data, and think about, for us as a panel of experts, what sorts of support our community is going to need going forward. And that's really why we're holding these types of webinars. We want to kind of, as learning professionals, we know that we're going to be important in the long term and normalizing this new state of distributed working and being at home and lots of distractions. So we want to try to figure out how best to apply our skills as an industry to this new normal.
Okay, great. We'll just turn things over to you then. If you want to comment on these things at all, Christina and Deborah, on the results, and then just get going with the agenda.
Sounds great. So thank you, Carrie, and thank you all of you for coming today. I love the fact that we're a good example of the imperfect perfect that we're dealing with. I just knocked over a glass of water on my desk. So I'm in the process of mopping that up. And of course, my notes are kind of floating on top. So, and you know, it's the reality that we're dealing with right now, because so many people are learning this technology, learning how to handle this. You know, now I will know not to put my water glass next to my notes. And if you could see my setup, I have my camera on 6 books so that I can get it to closer to eye level. I still haven't figured out where to look. So if I look like I'm looking off to the right, I'm really not. I'm looking at my camera, but so that's part of the learning process that we're going through, and part of the that we need to sort of acknowledge that, you know, this is not going to be perfect. You know, we're in a state of constant change. We're in a situation that we've never been in before, and it's all new to us. And so, you know, we're going to do the best that we can, and we might get some glitches, but you know, we'll keep moving on. And if you have any technical problems, we have a lot of great people that are here on the line who can help you get back into the situation. So we are such a diverse group. I love the fact that we're from all over the world. You know, our team has been working together just for a little bit of time. And, you know, I'm in Virginia. Christina is in North Carolina. You know, we've got a number of people in Minnesota. We're not talking to Dan because he's in Florida and the temperature is like 75 right now and beautifully sunny. So we'll still talk to Dan.
My apologies.
So we have a lot of material to cover today, and I grew up in New Jersey, so I tend to speak at Mach 1. If you have a comment about, you know, slow down, I will do that for about 3 seconds and then go back up to my normal pace. The good news is a lot of what we're going to cover and a lot of things that we want to share with you but won't be able to cover will be in the playbook. So you'll have a great resource when we're done with this. So we want to start with, you know, thinking about, we're going to skip that slide about annotating our, where we're feeling right now, since our annotation is not working quite the way that we want it to. And we're gonna cover several topics today. We're gonna have a basic framework where we're gonna talk about a checklist. We're going to have some recommended plays that we have, you know, keeping in line with this sports approach, and some plays that Christina and I and Dan have observed working well. And then we're going to ask you to share your audibles. So if you would, in the chat, would you please type whether or not you know what an audible is? And so yeah, I'm seeing that some people, can you tell me what it is? Go ahead and tell me what you think it's going to be. Yep. Okay. We got some people that don't know, some people that say, nope, not audible books. We're not talking about audible books. All right. So I'm a kind of a sports junkie, and an audible is actually something that Ken Blanchard talked about years ago when he wrote a book called Everyone is a Coach. And the A in coach stands for audible. So if there's some real football pros out there, I'm going to give this my best shot at defining it. But an audible, as I understand it, is that the quarterback comes to the line, he looks out over the situation and says, you know what, that play that we had planned to do isn't going to work. So instead, I'm going to call a new play. I'm going to call an audible. And, the hope is that this new play is going to work better than what they were thinking about it. So, Steve Larson, absolutely right. Reading the environment and making rapid decisions on the fly. And that is exactly where we are right now. It would be so fortunate if we had the luxury of making these changes and making these decisions, with all the time in the world, with all the information in the world, but that is not our reality. That's not our normal. It's not, and it is our new normal. And what our situation is that, we are going to have to do this as quickly as we can, and it's not going to be perfect. And so we're going to have to recognize that we will iterate, we'll pilot things, we'll try some things, and we'll see what works. And so we're really hoping that what you all right, Amy says that she's just lost audio. Is that just Amy, or is that also other people?
I can hear you.
We've got people that can hear us. All right. So one thing I want to mention is we asked for some feedback before the session, and we got an email from Doug from the state of Washington, who said he is facing this situation right now. He has 3,000 employees. They've been gradually building in a telework program. And now, like yesterday or last Tuesday, they said, I've got to send everybody home. Everybody has to go home. And so they've got hundreds of laptops being delivered daily so that they can be set up and prepared for the people that are working there. He's got to prepare people for how do you do the work that you were doing. So, Doug is really in the midst of everything. So if you could, in the chat, if you could also type in, are you facing the same kind of situation? Are you in the same environment where you are having to execute on a remote work policy with very little preparation or time to think through what's going on? So I see a lot of you are in that environment. And I think that's really why we are so happy that we can share some of the things that we've learned over the past few years about how do we get this remote work to work, and how can we do it quickly, so we can give you some shortcuts. So I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit first before we go into this. If you remember back just 3 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, in early March, when companies like Twitter and Microsoft and Google all said, hey, we want you all to start working remotely. And so there was just that beginning of a trickle. And then, like within the next week, it was this tsunami of organizations that were sending their people home. So, it became, a flood of people who were trying to figure out how to make this work, and in some cases, some organizations were more prepared, some organizations were less prepared. Some organizations that have been experimenting with telework or remote work have been had a little more experience in dealing with this. In some organizations that we've talked to that have done things like move their offices or do a complete redecorating of their office, actually they have some experience too that we can draw on. So everybody that I hear and everyone that I talk to right now is basically saying, this is the new normal, and the new normal is going to be with us for a long time. There's a global workforce analytics basically is saying that within 2 years, 25 to 30% of our workforce will be working remotely. That's compared to about 4% right now. So big changes, big things that are happening to us. So let's talk about some of the basics. There are, my background is strategic management, so I always want to have a plan, and I always want to have a well thought out plan, but in this case, we're going to have to make that plan on the fly. So, some basic things that we would ask you to think about. If you want to go ahead to the next slide. I think Rich is driving the slides. I'm not sure who's driving the slides. Oh, there we go. All right, so the the playing field checklist. Like, where are we now? What's the current situation? You know, do you have a remote work policy in place? Have you been doing telework? So what's the percentage of your workforce that currently works remotely, either on an occasional basis or a regular schedule? So having an understanding of what your data is, you know, what your circumstances are, will make it much easier for you to identify where the gaps are and where we need to make some particular changes. What percentage of your workforce is already remote ready with equipment like laptops and RSA tokens and microphones and webcams and speakers? I have been trying to buy a webcam for my mother, and they are completely sold out unless I want to spend $2,000, which I don't. So right now we're just seeing this run. You can't find a webcam at Walmart or Target, at Amazon, Best Buy. We finally found one kind of in the bottom of an old drawer that I think is going to work for her, because we want to be able to communicate with her. It's a very important that we have that kind of FaceTime with people. You know, do you have a committee that's already established to address these kinds of crisis situations? Many organizations have a continuity of operations plan in place. Some organizations have, you know, the thought about having a continuity of operations plan. Some people are like, I have no idea what we're going to do next. And that's really where Kathleen, you just got a webcam for Christmas. That's good to know. So where do you live? We might have to come and get that from you. So, all right. So do you have a committee or a task force that's already created to address this crisis? Many of our organizations have done some basic fundamental training on how to work remotely, usually focused around the technology. How do you use video conferencing? How do you use the platforms, the internal communication platforms like Slack or Twist or whatever other platforms that you might use? So most often what we find is that organizations will focus on that kind of technology. And we're going to talk about some other needs later on in this presentation. Have you looked at the jobs? One of the things that Doug pointed out from the state of Washington is that some jobs can't be done remotely. And other jobs, we think that they can't be done remotely, but in fact, if we rethink them, we can change the way that work is done. So I think not too long ago, we used to think that, you know, an assistant needed to sit in the office with it. Well, now we use all kinds of virtual assistants, and it works just quite as well as everyone else. So what percentage of your workforce cannot work remotely, and what's your plan for them? You know, what do we need to do with them? So it's interesting what Renee is pointing out, or actually Pidge is pointing out, that, you know, they have a lot of workforce that are working remotely but not sanctioned by HR. That's another issue. When my husband's university was told they needed to work remotely, they had to send out the telework agreement form that everyone had to sign at that moment. So, you know, they were semi-prepared, and they managed to kind of bring that into, get everybody on board with that. All right, so what are some recommended plays? First thing first. If we had to make a list of what you need to do first, you need to create a response team. And that team needs to be made up of the key stakeholders that are invested in this situation. So employees, managers, IT people, HR people, communications people. Who else do you think that could be, that should be on that team? And Melissa, I see what you're saying about manufacturing folks can't work from home. That is a very real problem. And so L&D, absolutely, L&D needs to be on the committee as well. Something that needs to be done, and probably needs to have been done some time ago, but it's to conduct a tech audit. Just figure out, you know, how many people have laptops, how many people could work remotely if the situation comes up, which it has now. So, and then create a work plan to look at the kinds of work and to get people involved in reassessing Yeah, I see, Melissa, you're having to get laptops on the fly for many workers. I mean, that's such a huge issue to deal with, because, you know, there'd be one thing if everybody was equipped with the laptops, that would make the transition much easier. But we know that that's not the case. We have a lot of people that are still working on their desktops at the office. So you guys have been giving us a lot of ideas. Kathleen, you have an old-fashioned cable connected to your tower and not a Wi-Fi. That's a great issue. So Dan, what else are you seeing in the chat that we should bring forward?
Well, one participant brought up that they're having challenges with their supervisor. Supervisor that is used to being in control and tightly observing what's going on a daily basis, now not feeling so much in control, being a little bit more intrusive, wanting verbal updates every day on what the person's been doing at home. So do you have any
Yeah, we are
that type of supervisor?
Yeah, absolutely. That is such an important issue that we're going to talk about a little bit later when we talk about performance, because one of the biggest obstacles to successful remote work are the leaders, because they do have that fear. They're afraid of letting go, losing control. So we find that some leaders, in order to feel like they're still in control, put processes in place that are really draconian, that they actually feel like, you know, we're in a worse situation than we could possibly be. And so, you know, part of our grace and part of our forgiveness is recognizing that the leaders are still fumbling their way through this. And so what we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So I'm going to put that off onto the parking lot a bit. So, but that's an excellent point. So Sherry says they do Skype tag 3 times a week and phone tag 2 times a week. That's good. That's really good. And so we're going to be taking the comments that you put into the chat and adding those to the playbook. So, you know, we're going to go through and synthesize all of your great suggestions and include that. So that's really good. All right. So we have, we're going to talk now about communication, because that is the, and here we have a coach that's communicating clearly, we hope. And communication is one of those things that, you know, is a critical element of any change management program. It's a critical element to a crisis management program. And, you know, we're in the midst of both of those. So how do we help people understand what the issues are? So the kind of checklist that we're talking about are things like, you know, do you have a communication plan? You know, we've seen organizations address this situation differently, from sending an email over the weekend telling their employees not to come to work on Monday, as opposed to other organizations that have been sending information and communication through different channels, saying, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to, you know, understand, you know, we want you to understand that we're addressing the problem. And in order for you to be prepared, we want you to take your laptops home with you every night, because we don't know what the next step is going to be. So, you know, from a kind of an abrupt approach to making the change to a more phased approach to making the situation. So what kind of communication channels will you use? In the chat, would you please comment on how many of your organizations notified you that you were going to be working remotely by email? Yeah, I see a lot of people putting all email, right? Okay, so that's good. We got some in person. And what we're going to recommend in terms of our plays is to think about the kinds of communication channels that you have available to you and make use of all of them. Email is very good under some circumstances, but in this time of chaos and confusion and anxiety, the high touch, you know, personal voice is going to go a long way toward making this situation more palatable. So, you know, what communication channels are you going to use? What sources of information are you going to use? Because we have a channel here in DC that does a lot of verifying, so that we're, you know, trying to get, you know, clarity on what the real facts are. So making sure that your information is clear. You know, what's your update schedule? At this point in this kind of a situation, more frequent updates, more frequent discussions about what the issues are important. Who's going to be doing the communicating? So, that can vary a lot on your organization culture. In some cases, it's the CEO. In other cases, it's the direct supervisor that's the more trusted communicator. So who's going to be doing the communication and what works for your organization? And then because it's not one way, or it should not be one way, what kinds of mechanisms do you have in place for feedback? So, some of our recommended plays, early and often, be proactive, talk to people as early and as often as you possibly can. Even if you don't have new information, share what you know and share that you are trying to get more information and that you'll give it to them as soon as possible. So another play that we recommend is Sesame Street. And I don't know if you all remember Sesame Street, but if you do remember it, episodes were brought to you by the letter B. So there'd be the letter B, and then they would talk about bananas, and then they would talk about the bouncing balls. So make use of multiple channels and multiple methods of communication. And then another play is, what did you hear me say? One observation that I've noticed as I've worked with organizations in crisis is that for some reason our ears stop working, and so we can't hear. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're checking for understanding and make sure that the people that you've communicated to are actually hearing what you've said. So keep me in the loop, make sure we're scheduling regular updates, and let your people know that you're listening to them. So set up scheduled times where you will talk to them and surface what their concerns are and give them ideas about how you're approaching the issue and what they need from you. So let me know that you're listening. Big issue right now is creating a virtual water cooler. How much information do we have? Yes, Slack is incredible. Slack is great. And not a lot of people are familiar with using it who are not used to doing remote work. So, having a mechanism where you can share information just informally. And in fact, create channels in Slack or Twist or whatever form you use that are just for personal information, like post a picture of your dog or post a picture of you on a video call with your cat that walks across the screen in front of you. So we need to kind of bring that personal back in, because just because we're sitting separately and physically distancing should not mean that we're socially isolating ourselves. So bring the virtual water cooler back in. So a last thing that we would recommend is something that I've seen organizations use very effectively, which is set office hours. So the leader says, I'm going to be available for you to ask me questions on Tuesdays from 10 until 2 or 10 until noon or noon to 2 or whatever the hours are that works for your organization. But by just specifying what those office hours are, you alleviate the uncertainty in your team about how can they reach you. So they don't know, they can't just walk past your office and say, oh, okay, he's available or she's available. I'll just pop in and ask a question. So set some office hours and communicate those so that people have an idea about when they can talk to you. So, okay. Dan, anything that you've picked up on the chat? It's going by so quickly. I'm like,
yeah, there's a lot of different points here. Several people like the use of video to maintain engagement, keeping that face-to-face social feel. And they're not only for official business, but unofficial water cooler, as you mentioned. One person even says they're doing lunch over video chat.
Yeah, great idea.
Other folks are more concerned about bandwidth and things like that. So too much video can be a drag on the system and can break up the meeting or whatever the communication is that's going on.
Yeah, that's a real problem, especially as we look at all of our schools are out right now and our teachers are trying to use Zoom to teach classes, and every organization is trying to use Zoom. I wish I'd bought stock in Zoom, but So if you're having one of the recommendations from someone who wrote in before from New York Life said, if you're having bandwidth issues with Skype or Zoom, reboot your router, especially if you have, if you also make sure that you restart your laptop every night. So that clears the cache. So that's, one of the issues that you can do. But, I know we have some really smart tech people on the line. Oh, David, you did buy Zoom stock, so that's good for you. So anything else, Dan, in there?
I think overall,
Mm-hmm.
people appreciate, maybe it's a self-selection issue with people in a webinar, but people appreciate the communication they can get, the real-time communication they can get, and organizations that make an effort to keep in touch, especially leaders that make an effort to keep in touch.
So important to share information and to touch people in a one-on-one basis. A big part of what we're dealing with right now is managing the anxiety of this whole change. And so that requires more personal touch and talking to people. So I'm going to hand it off now to Christina, and she's going to talk about engagement.
Hey, thank you so much, Deborah. So we'll just start right off with asking everyone on chat, on a scale of 1 to 5, how engaged do you think your teams are right now? 1 being not so engaged and 5 being super engaged. So, and while we talk, real employee engagement is a necessity and it's a choice. BC, before COVID-19, an engaged employee was somebody who, exceeded expectations and felt empowered. Now we're happy they show up. And we're looking right here, we're seeing, 1s, 3s, 2s, 7 on a scale of 1 to 5. That's fantastic. And pi. Thank you very much, Nicholas. So the idea is that how do we help people feel engaged? Let's look at the next slide we're going to go over to is Maslow's hierarchy of need, because the idea is that how do we empathize with our teammates? And as Deborah had said earlier, a lot of this is about how do we eliminate the stress, the worry, the concerns. So what we did was we took the Maslow's hierarchy of need and assigned it for personal needs, and then also for professional remote worker needs. Right now we're back to basics, to survival. Just very quickly, we went from, feeling very safe and insured at work, and now our whole world is turned upside down. So, your personal needs, food, water, shelter, toilet paper. I think somebody said that they were willing to, Greg Gilbert was offering TP for a webcam, or going to sell TP for a webcam. And then also, so on basics for a remote worker would be salary that pays, has benefits, et cetera. Safety is huge. That's the stability, which isn't quite there right now. And then for remote workers, it's structure with clear leadership guidance and expectations. Again, Pearl, I thought you said it really well about the trust that's required and to build from leaders and their teams, and having that trust piece is so important. And for that, they feel that they're safe, belonging, in personal needs, that's friendship, love, trust, intimacy. Professional remote worker needs, that's the everyday understanding how their work aligns and that they belong to someone. There's a lot of consistently throughout the entire read about how I'm feeling isolated. I don't feel like I'm connecting. And that's something that's really important. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Joanne, about Maslow's hierarchy, was really with Hurricane Irma. I went through Hurricane Harvey, and it was amazing how you saw the shifts of where people felt from survival to belonging to importance. And importance is feeling work, project, and contributions are valued through meaningful connection with leadership. And then self-actualization. Are they feeling like this is the best time for development, developing your teams, developing connection, developing skill sets that previously you didn't have? So, or you felt like you wanted to enhance. It could be trust, which Amy Edmondson work is fantastic. And Steve Covey's Speed of Trust is fantastic. So there's a lot of really great stuff out there. So, the idea is, what is the checklist for, the playing field? And again, this is going to be in the playbook. Are you addressing the anxiety and the stress for survival as a leader? Safety, does your team have the right technology? And we were seeing how, do you have the right bandwidth? Do you have everything that you need? Belonging, do you have an easily accessible feedback mechanism? How are they able to connect with you and you to connect with them? Are you using pulse checks? I mean, there's a lot of things. We're just talking about bi-directional, but how are we checking with them? Asking, you could be using Glint, you could be using a lot of different types of ways to do little pulse indicators of how they're doing and how they're feeling. Belonging, importance, has a senior executive team member conducted meetings with your team, like even just fireside chat, virtual fireside chat, to connect with your teams in small groups, just to give them to assuage their fears. Now that might feel like, they're working on some really big things, but at the same time, taking that time from that senior leadership group is going to make an incredible impression on your teams. And then lastly, the self-actualization is to help them have opportunities for career and team development. Right now, learning together is a great way to build cohesion. LinkedIn has some open courses. There's like 16 open courses on how to benefit for working in remote. You could identify other playlists for your teams to go and take a course or watch a TED Talk or listen to a podcast and then come together and discuss that. I read just recently something that I thought was really cool was that one group actually does playing video games. They play video games online to help with problem solving, and they work in subgroups, which I thought was really fascinating. And the biggest part is at work, so long we've been hearing about work-life balance. How do you work-life balance? So right now it's like, it's everything's together and we're three-dimensional people. And yes, your cat will walk by. My husband had to wrestle the animals upstairs so that they wouldn't walk past my screen or distract me. Now, today, it's not unusual for that to happen and no one's passing judgment. We're a kinder and gentler group of people. I think I'm going to stop there because I really want to make sure that we get through the other two sections as well. So, hey, Dan, what did you see in the for audibles, things that people are sharing?
Yes, so several people appreciated the hierarchy of needs comparison, especially as you said, these professional and personal needs are now basically collapsed, and the feeling of safety both in job and things like trying to find toilet paper or food on the shelves of grocery stores being gone. Both of those strains coming together right now.
That's true. And it's even, we just went to, I'm out of Charlotte, North Carolina right now. We were talking earlier before we went on that we just went to shelter in place. And we have a cop at the end of the street right now. This morning we went in shelter in place and everyone's a little freaked out that there's a police officer parked at the end of the street. Now, how does that make you feel safe? It probably make us feel safe, but we're not used to that type of presence. So how do you help your teams feel that way? Others?
There was some good news. Some organizations seem to be banding together, across the different functionalities. So organizational development, HR, technology, they're coming together to help support workers who are having to work from home.
And I'm looking at how one of the things that we did during Hurricane Harvey was doing that daily call-in. We had a daily call-in at 10:30, my entire team. We were responsible for orientation, et cetera, accreditation. And every morning we would meet and everyone would call in. And it basically was just a roll call. It was just a roll call to make sure everyone was safe. And in fact, during one of our roll calls, one of my team members was actually on the roof of his house. And it was, we were able to tell, he was actually in his attic and we're like, you need to get out of your attic. You can't be, because they tell you not to go. So he went onto the roof of his house and we were actually talking with him while he was, him and his children were climbing on the top. And that really brings home that sense of community though, that everybody felt safe talking and checking in, and that we had made the commitment that even if it was for 5 minutes, that we all honored each other and valued each other. And I think that's the big thing with engagement right now. If we can bring the humans first back into working together, so that's the connectedness, and help break that isolation, because there is culture. Even though we're not at work, we still have a culture, and we can still continue to work on that culture and foster it. And right now we can make a really pretty neat culture if we all commit to working together. So with that said, Claire just posted a really great article on maintaining your mental health during lockdown from Forbes. It's right in the listing here for people to read. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over back to Dr. Deborah for performance.
Thanks, Christina. Gosh, there are just so many great things in the chat. I'm just like, keep reading them. So if I'm distracted, I'm sorry. I'm just like, wow, you guys are doing some wonderful things. So, there's always this question about, are remote workers really working? And people kind of roll their eyes. There's so much evidence that shows, in fact, that if remote work is done right, it's more productive. So we're not going to talk about, performance in the sense of, the long term, but we're going to talk about what are some of the things that we need to do to help our teams be productive and high performing right now. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the notion of establishing structure and routine. And I've seen some organizations, they'll do what what I think I mentioned before, they establish hot hours, and that's an opportunity for people to work together, to be available, to communicate, to collaborate, so that in that time period, people are available so that you can work together. And that just gives a sense of comfort and reliability that I can find somebody, which is a big part of trust. And we'll talk a little bit more about trust. One of the other things that we recommend that has been very important as organizations are going through this craziness right now, this March Madness, is to try to, as much as possible, simulate your regular experience in the office. So if your office is a traditional kind of 8:30 to 5:30 organization, set that as your basic framework for your daily schedule. So kind of create as much normalcy as possible. One thing that organizations have done is to encourage people, usually there's an opportunity to go back into the office and pick up whatever they needed. Like if they didn't have their laptop or their charger with them, they have an opportunity to go in and pick those things up. Encourage them also to bring the things that make them feel like they're at home at their office. So if they have pictures of their kids that are on their desk, tell them to bring them home and put them on their workspace where they're working right now. And then, because this is such a new and difficult situation, you have someone, in your house who's also working remotely. You've got your kids that are at home. You've got them demanding time and attention. We have a much greater appreciation of teachers now because of all the things that they do. So, encourage your team to have a conversation with their family about how are we going to negotiate this time period? How are we going to set up, ourselves to be successful? So, maybe it's that we need to, alternate, I'm going to be on from these hours and my partner is going to be on for those hours. So try to find ways to collaborate and coordinate your schedules. And part of this goes to the supervisor. The supervisors have to acknowledge that we need to be a little bit fluid on this schedule. That it may be an 8:30 to 5:30 is kind of the typical, but it could be that I'm only going to be able to work between 10 and 5:30, and then I'm going to pick up my other hours later in the evening when I have my kids in bed. So appreciate the fact that people are going through such great stress. And then, one of the things that we also have talked about is managing anxiety. Managing the anxiety is so critical. I'm part of another organization, and we have a big meeting scheduled for next week, which now is going to be virtual. And the organizers of the meeting have sent us care packages. And in the care packages, we have tea, we have a little candle, we have a little mini whiteboard so that we can write our thoughts down on that. So, communicate to the people that are sitting out there in the field that you're thinking about them, and you recognize that this is not normal, and we're going to try to take as good care of you as possible. Which reminds me, I have colleagues that have, just fantastic plants in their offices. And now I'm not going to bring all my plants home. They're not going to bring their, 5-foot trees home. So one nice thing to do, one thoughtful thing to do, is to offer to have their plants watered. So set up a service to water the plants in the office. Things that would help them feel like they are being taken care of. Another organization created a to-go box. And so when they were making the decision that people were going to start working remotely, the day before they announced that they were going to go out, they put together a to-go box that had staples and markers and pencils and stuff, Post-it notes that you needed to be able to do your work at home that you probably didn't have, those kinds of supplies at home. So, giving them, a to-go box, giving them a care package. I've seen lots of you recommend virtual coffee breaks or happy hours, or I have a friend who has just had a virtual happy hour and they played Family Feud together. So, there are a lot of things that we can do to bring people together on this, in this very difficult time period, and one of the things as the leader, we have a responsibility to honor the anxiety that people are feeling, that it's very normal. And we all, are feeling this kind of uncertainty and confusion and concern, for not only ourselves and what we're doing in our work, but for our family and for our extended family and for, what's the world coming to. Honor their anxiety, and then being patient. I can see that we have, people of varying degrees of technical prowess. And, some people are going to take to this, webinar stuff, and this Zoom camera stuff like nothing. And others are going to go, now, I'm not quite sure where that microphone is. So we all have to be patient with each other and recognize that that we all are learning. And that's really what it's all about, is we're learning. So, I saw one of the comments go by about trust. And when we talk about performance for remote teams, the key element is trust. And you're absolutely right. I don't remember who said it now, unfortunately, but trust is not going to be something that's developed now that we're doing remote work. It needs to be developed earlier. And now we really need to have trust, because we have to believe that the people that are out working remotely are going to do their work the way that we want them to do it and the way that they have been doing it. So developing the trust and the willingness to accept that people are going to do the best that they can too. So that's a really critical part of this process of performance, because if we can't really trust people, then it's difficult to get the things that we want to have done. The last thing I want to talk about is training. And I mentioned earlier that many organizations have done a great job of training people on the technology, but they've not trained people so much on how do we work together in these circumstances? How do we collaborate together? How do I make sure that I'm bringing in the information that I need to make the right decision and to do my work? So how do we collaborate? How do we communicate? How do we manage up? I can imagine, and I know from talking to some of the remote workers, that there's a lot of anxiety about, well, my manager isn't going to know what I've been working on because they're not there to see me working. So how do I communicate with them that I'm actually accomplishing what I say I'm accomplishing? So, some of the soft skills I really don't like the term soft skills, some of the human skills that we need are the ones that are most critical right now. And then, I think as Christina alluded to earlier, help with work-life balance. So for the first time, many people are working in their homes with their work right next to them. And it's very hard to set boundaries because, gosh, I could just go back and finish that report if I put in a couple of more hours after dinner. And we have to, as managers, help them realize that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for you to do the work, but we also want you to have a life. And taking a walk, making sure that you visit with your family, making sure you're eating right, get lunch, doing the kinds of self-care things that are so critical right now to help us kind of get through this situation is an important part of that work-life balance that we have to really help people know how to do. So I think I'm going to stop at this point. So Dan, anything that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think people are in line with what you're talking about. Even some of the veteran folks who are used to working at home are struggling a bit because they have kids at home or other family members at home. So it's still having trouble with work and life being too close and overlapping too much. One participant said they even go so far as to schedule a time with their spouse every morning so that they can catch up on how they're doing and family time and things like that.
Yes, that's right. That's good. Yeah. So, Christina, I'm going to send it back to you now, and you can, we've been talking about what you, the leader, can do to help your team. I think Christina's going to talk about what you need.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deborah. Really, remember when you're on the airplane and they say before you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help others. This is a time that we're also focusing on ourselves as well to stay strong. And I was thinking of 3 G's. There's grit, grace, and gratitude. Grit is being strong, even in the face of isolation and challenges, is having the grit and just really scratching to find out what is it that's out there that you can utilize and be resourceful to be there for your teams. Grace, be forgiving with yourself. This is a hard time, and don't be hard on yourself that, there are going to be issues, there's going to be misses, we're not going to quite make a full transition from working in an office to now. I'm reading here about how one of the, overnight 3,000 employees are out being on remote. How can we help them do that? How can we be as graceful to ourselves and to others as possible if someone's not meeting in a results-oriented environment, that they're not meeting those gains? I think saw something about an accountability partner. Even when you're setting things up for yourself, how do you have an accountability? Because leadership can be lonely. So how can you help yourself be successful as a leader? Well, I've always recommended to some of my colleagues is to reach out to to people in your network, possibly within your company or outside your company, and set up accountability partners to help you stay on track and to help you stay authentic. And then gratitude is being thankful. Be thankful for what you have. There was a lot of in here about helping at leading your team in gratitude exercises, helping yourself just write 3 things, good things that are happening, that happened today, and help to shift, because shift happens, and it just happened to us. So how do we make those changes? So it's gratitude, grace, and grit. And the Calm app, I saw somebody say they downloaded Calm. I love the Calm app. I do it every day, that 10 minutes of them in the morning. It really helps. So, and there's some skills to consider. So one of the things is thinking, pick a skill for yourself that you want to develop and create a playlist. And a playlist is saying, okay, I want to learn more about, let's see, I think reading through here, there was trust building, accountability, delegation, compelling communication, conflict resolution, and teamwork. Pick one of them and do a Google search and identify the TED Talks, the podcast, everything. Make a list, cut and paste, put it into a Word document, and every day pick one thing, just one thing, and focus on it. It may seem a lot to do a whole course, then just do a little chunk. Another piece is staying visual and connected by sending out short daily emails out. Focus on one person that's on your team that's done something fantastic. Sending thank you notes to people, even handwriting thank you notes and mailing them to people. I mean, talk about something that's tactile and not virtual. Just a handwritten note can mean so much. Well, we're almost at the end of the hour, and there's so many other things I'd like to share, but man, this went really quick. The good thing is we're going to be placing it into that remote playbook with all the information that have been going through on this chat, the information Dr. Deborah, Dr. Dan has been sharing, and I'm just going to turn it back over. Was there anything that people wanted to share on leadership?
There was some discussion on here about accountability partners, which seemed to resonate with quite a few participants. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, actually, it was interesting. I was coaching a CEO of a health system, and I remember when he was talking with a group of us, he had made a huge impact on healthcare, and actually the organization had been recognized in the presidential debates, and both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, had recognized this organization. And he said, guess how many people reached out to me to congratulate me that we were recognized? And we were all quiet, and he goes, so leadership is lonely at all levels. So having an accountability partner, being mindful and purposeful and connecting with somebody, and even just a text. Right now, I'm going through a certification program, and my accountability partner and myself, we just send texts to one another first thing in the morning. This is what I'm going to get done. And at the end of the day, I say whether I did it or not. That is a text. And it's, whatever you got done, yay, whatever you didn't, don't tell me why. You don't have to give me excuses. Just let me know where you're at and how you can help. That's all. And I see mindfulness, yes, huge. So I'm going to turn it back over to you guys.
Carrie, you want to take it?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been really great. Love ending with the great gratitude and grace piece. So thank you so much to our experts, to Dr. Deborah and to Dr. Christina and to Dr. Dan. I'm just using your first names. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing all of your knowledge and thoughts and best practices. I think this has been really great. There's been so much great talk in the chat channel, so I know we'll be adding so much of your thoughts and what you're doing right now to manage and to succeed in the playbook that we'll have out to you in a few days, along with the recording. I just want everyone to know that Allen Interactions, we are here for you. We're in this together. We're offering complimentary consulting services. The information is right there on the screen to connect with us. Claire can throw some in the chat too. So you can go to our website and reach us there. Our number and our chat bot is on it's not a chat bot, it's an actual person. We'll connect with you. That is Rich. So there's that. And then we also are offering on weekdays a daily innovation Zoom. So you can get on there at 12 p.m. Eastern. Claire will throw that in the chat channel as well. Bring a problem, a challenge, something that you just want to talk about, talk through. We are here for you, and we're doing that every day at 12 p.m. Eastern. And next week, we are going to have Dr. Christina on again, and I think Dr. Dan McCoy as well, and we'll be doing this webinar on 4 strategies to optimize your learning and development now, and that'll be on April 2nd, and we'll put a link to that in the channel as well, and we'll send that out in the email too, so you can sign up for that if you're interested in that one. So again, thank you to all of our experts. Thank you all for joining us. Just keep doing what you're doing, keep improving a little bit every day. I mean, that's all we can ask ourselves. Give yourself grace and take care of yourselves. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.